Introduction. You believe your perfectionism is a virtue, a sign of high standards, a commitment to excellence. But what if that's a lie? What if behind the almost virtuous shine of your perfectionism lies a fear as deep as it is poorly understood? The fear of your own power. In the next few minutes, the great psychologist Carl Jung will show you why your relentless pursuit of perfection is not a strength, but a sophisticated mechanism of self-sabotage. And I will reveal the 5 practical steps you can take, starting today, to break free from this gilded prison and finally unleash the life that is waiting for you. Part 1. The elegant paralysis. Perfectionism, under the clinical and almost surgical gaze of Carl Gustav Jung, is not merely a mania for details, nor is it an elevated quality that distinguishes the best from the average. From a Jungian perspective, it is a deeply rooted psychic mechanism that serves a very specific function: to protect the ego from confronting internal contents that it is not prepared to integrate. And among these contents, most often, is the individual's own inner power. Jung observed that human beings live in constant tension between what is conscious and what remains unconscious. Perfectionism fits precisely into this liminal territory between the conscious that desires admiration and the unconscious that fears exposure. The obsession with doing everything impeccably right is often a plausible excuse to avoid concrete action. For while one is perfecting something, one is not taking real risks. But there is something even deeper in this process. Perfectionism feeds on the persona, the social mask that each person constructs to present themselves to the world. This mask seeks acceptance, approval, recognition. For the perfectionist, the persona becomes almost an altar, a sacred place where everything must shine without blemishes. They need the world to see them as meticulous, dedicated, and demanding of themselves. This irreproachable public image functions as a shield, and behind this shield lies what Jung called the shadow. But this mask, this flawless facade, serves a darker purpose. It is a shield. And behind this shield, you hide from the most dangerous question of all. What am I truly capable of? Because the answer to that question is not just inspiring, it is frightening. To discover your own power is to simultaneously discover the immense responsibility that comes with it. It is to look back at the years of preparation and see them for what they were: a form of hiding, a precious, irreversible waste of time. And that realization, Jung knew, is psychologically devastating. So you stay busy. You stay almost ready. You convince yourself that one more adjustment, one more piece of information, one more perfect moment is all you need. But the perfect moment never comes. Because perfectionism was never about achieving perfection. It was about avoiding the battlefield of real life. It is a strategy to stay small, to stay safe, to stay protected from the glorious, terrifying, and unpredictable consequences of unleashing your true self upon the world. You tell yourself you are building a perfect ship, but you are really just staying in the harbor, terrified of the ocean. The endless adjustments are not a sign of high standards. They are the chains you are forging to keep yourself anchored to the familiar shore. Think of the painter who has a masterpiece in their mind, but spends a decade just mixing the paints, convinced the exact shade of blue has not yet been found. The truth is, they are not afraid of mixing the wrong blue. They are afraid of the canvas. They are afraid of the moment the brush touches the linen and the perfect image in their mind is forced to confront the messy, imperfect reality of creation. This is the essence of the elegant paralysis. It is the illusion of progress without the risk of exposure. Consider the writer who has been working on the same first chapter for 3 years. Every morning, they open the document, they read the first paragraph, they change a word, they change it back. They close the laptop and tell themselves they need more time to think. To the outside world, they are a dedicated writer. To themselves, they are a person in the grip of a quiet, invisible terror. The terror of finishing. Because finishing means submitting. Submitting means being judged. And being judged means the world will finally see what they have always feared, that the magnificent novel in their mind is not the same as the imperfect, human, real novel on the page. And so, they never finish. They never submit. And the novel, the one that could have moved people, changed lives, or simply existed as a testament to their courage, dies inside a laptop that is never opened again. This is not a story about a writer. This is a story about you, about the business you have been planning for 4 years, about the conversation you have been rehearsing but never having, about the life you have been designing in your mind but never actually living. Jung saw this pattern with devastating clarity. He called it the unlived life, and he said it was the source of more human suffering than almost anything else. Part 2. The terror of your own greatness. Speaking of the fear of one's own power may sound strange at first glance. After all, who in their right mind would be afraid of being powerful? Isn't that what everyone says they want? To be strong, successful, capable of transforming their lives and the world around them. But Carl Jung compels us to look beyond the obvious answers. For him, the fear of one's own power is not only real, it is one of the deepest and most paralyzing fears of human beings. This fear arises because true personal power is not just a source of fulfillment. It also carries an immense burden of responsibility. Recognizing who one truly is implies accepting that one could have done more, gone further, created or achieved extraordinary things. And this realization is psychologically devastating for many. For in admitting one's own power, a person must also confront the time wasted, the missed opportunities, the dreams postponed under the excuse of lack of perfection. Jung said that there is a significant difference between what the ego consciously desires and what the self, the deepest core of the psyche, demands from us. The self calls us to realize our individuation, to develop our fullest uniqueness. But this call is uncomfortable, sometimes painful, because it forces us to step out of our comfort zone, to abandon fragile and limited identities, and to face the unknown that exists both within and outside of us. That is why for many people it is safer to remain small. Living below one's potential offers comfort, anonymity, and less exposure. Being excellent requires courage, not only to face external challenges, but above all, to deal with the gaze of others and the relentless judgment that often accompanies those who dare to shine. Because society, even if it claims to value genius, often punishes those who stand out too much. Those who appear too great become targets of envy, suffocating expectations, or even hostility. We are afraid of the judgment that comes with shining too brightly. Society claims to value genius, but it often punishes those who stand out. Envy, expectation, hostility, these are the shadows that follow success. And so, we dim our own light to avoid attracting attention. We are also afraid of the demands of our own power. To be great is to be held to a higher standard, not by others, but by yourself. You can no longer settle for mediocrity. You can no longer tolerate your own excuses. You must live up to the potential you have discovered within you. And that is a relentless, lifelong demand. Perfectionism, then, is the perfect alibi. It is the trench where you hide from the call of your own self. As long as you are busy chasing an impossible standard, you can avoid the anguish of answering that call. You can tell yourself you are striving for the best, when in reality, you are simply running from the responsibility of your own strength. This is the great, tragic irony of the perfectionist. In your attempt to build an invulnerable life, you build an invisible one. You trade the messy, vibrant, unpredictable reality of a life fully lived for the sterile, controlled, and ultimately empty perfection of a life never begun. Because a life fully lived involves failure, it involves awkwardness, It involves criticism. It involves heartbreak. Your power, your true potential, lives in that messy reality. It does not live in the clean, theoretical world of planning and preparation. By refusing to step into the mess, you are refusing to meet your own power. You are choosing the safety of the blueprint over the glory of the cathedral. Jung also observes something that modern psychology has since confirmed. The human psyche cannot tolerate a vacuum. When the energy that should be used for creation, action, and transformation is blocked by perfectionism, it does not simply disappear, it turns inward. It becomes self-critical. It becomes anxious. It becomes the voice at 3 a.m. that asks whether your life is going anywhere. The perfectionist, therefore, is not someone who has high standards. They are someone whose creative life force has been redirected inward and is slowly consuming them from the inside out. The pursuit of the perfect is not a sign of ambition. It is the sound of a soul eating itself. Part 3. The Shadow's Sabotage. To understand why so many perfectionists remain trapped in endless cycles of idealization and immobility, one must delve into one of the most fascinating and disturbing concepts of Carl Gustav Jung's analytical psychology, the shadow. And when talking about the perfectionist's shadow, it is not just about flaws, vices, or ugly thoughts. It is primarily about repressed potential, hidden desires, and fears so deep that they often do not even reach consciousness. Jung defined the shadow as everything that the individual does not wish to be, but that nonetheless is. These are aspects, qualities, impulses, abilities, and feelings that have been banished from consciousness because they did not fit the socially acceptable image, the persona that each person has constructed for themselves. In the case of the perfectionist, the persona is impeccable. Someone disciplined, detail-oriented, always in pursuit of excellence. But behind this facade, the shadow may contain precisely the opposite: fear, insecurity, anger, envy, and ironically also grand talents that have been repressed for seeming excessive or threatening. For Jung, repressing the shadow does not make it disappear. On the contrary, everything that is denied and banished to the unconscious becomes even more powerful, exerting a silent influence over thoughts, behaviors, and decisions. Perfectionism can then be seen as a highly sophisticated defense mechanism. By maintaining an obsessive focus on details, the individual keeps the shadow locked away, preventing its contents from surfacing and forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. This is where the paradox arises. The perfectionist believes they are in control, that they are working hard to achieve the best possible outcome. But in reality, they are controlled by the fear that resides in their shadow, controlled by the anxiety of exposing themselves, of being criticized, of shining too brightly, or of failing spectacularly. It is as if perfectionism were a protective wall, only at the same time, this wall also becomes a prison. Within the perfectionist's shadow dwell not only the flaws they fear to show, but also their greatness. Many do not realize that the greater fear is not of making mistakes, but of hitting the mark perfectly. Because realizing one's potential means launching oneself into the world without shields. It means dealing with envy, the weight of expectations, and the need to maintain results. And above all, it means having to acknowledge that all the time spent hiding was in part a precious waste. Jung believed that there is immense life force in the shadow. Everything we repress, including our talents, creativity, and boldness, remains there, accumulating energy. This energy, not finding a healthy outlet for expression, begins to manifest dysfunctionally. Chronic anxiety, panic attacks, compulsions, extreme procrastination. That is why many perfectionists live in a permanent state of tension. They carry within them a dormant volcano ready to erupt. And there is something even more unsettling. The shadow does not only reveal itself in moments of crisis, it infiltrates the small choices of daily life. In an email that takes hours to write because it is never good enough. In a project that is never launched. In a relationship that ends before it even begins out of fear of not being perfect. In the eyes of the other, the shadow silently sabotages every step while the perfectionist maintains the illusion of merely waiting for the right moment. Deep down, perfectionism is an unconscious strategy to avoid contact with this shadow. For facing it means admitting hard truths, that the person is hiding from their own potential, that fear paralyzes them more than any imperfection ever could, and that as long as perfectionism seems noble, no one will force them to change. Jung described this as the psyche's most cunning trick. It takes your greatest fear, dresses it in your greatest virtue, and presents it to the world as a strength. And the world applauds. Your boss praises your attention to detail. Your friends admire your high standards. Your family calls you disciplined. And all the while, the shadow grows stronger in the dark, feeding on the energy of every unlaunched project, every unsent message, every dream that was polished until it disappeared. This is the cost of keeping the shadow locked away, not just the external cost of missed opportunities and delayed dreams, but the internal cost, the gnawing sense that your real life is happening somewhere else, to someone braver, the quiet grief of knowing, somewhere deep down, that you are capable of so much more than you are allowing yourself to be. That grief is not weakness. It is the soul speaking. It is the self, in Jung's language, knocking on the door of the ego and asking to be let in. The longer you wait, the stronger the prison becomes and the fainter the voice of your true self grows. The shadow, fed by years of inaction, becomes a tyrant. It whispers that you are an imposter, that you have waited too long, that it is now too late. It points to others who have already sailed their ships and uses their success as evidence of your failure. And so, the perfectionism intensifies. The need to be flawless becomes even more desperate, because now you are not just trying to create something good. You are trying to create something so undeniably brilliant that it justifies the years of lost time. It is a debt that can never be repaid. Part 4. The courage to be imperfect. After delving into the depths of the human psyche, perhaps the most important question remains for many. What do I do now? Because intellectually understanding that perfectionism is a form of fear is not enough. Knowing that there is a latent power hidden beneath layers of demand and self-criticism is also insufficient. Action is required. It is necessary to bring into daily reality everything that Jung taught us about individuation, shadow, and integration. The truth is simple but painful. As long as someone is waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect idea, or the perfect execution, life will pass by. Perfectionism robs not only external opportunities but also the chance to discover who you truly are. Jung said that suffering arises not from living a difficult life but from living a life that is not ours. Perfectionism in this sense is an elegant trap that keeps many people stuck in small, safe, and deeply unsatisfying existences. So, how do we begin to break this cycle? Here are some concrete practices inspired by both Jungian psychology and modern applied psychology techniques. 1. Act before you are ready. The initial impulse should come from action, not thought. If you are writing a text, finish the draft without worrying about whether it is perfect. If you have a project, launch it even if it is not the final version. Jung believed that the self can only fully emerge when it is lived in the real world, not just contemplated in the mind. 2. Set clear limits for preparation. Give yourself a short, almost uncomfortable deadline to plan, then commit to acting, because each additional day in the preparation phase feeds the illusion that you are still not good enough. Perfection is not in endless preparation, but in the courage to correct as you go. 3. Dialogue with your shadow. When you feel fear, shame, or blockage, instead of fleeing, sit down and write, what am I really afraid of here? What is the worst that could happen if I do this imperfectly? Often, just naming the fear diminishes its power. 4. Practice good enough. Choose one small thing each day to do in a good enough way. An email that you send without rereading it 10 times. A meal that you cook without following the recipe exactly. A conversation where you allow yourself to be awkward. Each of these small acts is a vote for your freedom. It is a microdose of courage that builds your tolerance for imperfection. 5. Celebrate the action, not the outcome. Shift your definition of success. Success is not a flawless result. Success is the courage to act. It is the willingness to show up and be seen in your imperfection. When you finish your sloppy first draft, celebrate. When you launch your imperfect project, celebrate. You are rewiring your brain to reward the process, not the product. Jung also pointed to something that many modern psychologists have since confirmed through neuroscience. The act of doing, even imperfectly, rewires the brain. Every time you act despite fear, you create a new neural pathway, a new piece of evidence that you are someone who acts, someone who ships, someone who tries. The brain is not a fixed organ. It is a living, adaptive system that is constantly being shaped by your choices. And every choice to act in the face of imperfection is a vote for the identity of someone who is free. This is the sacred work. It is the journey from the prison of perfection to the freedom of wholeness. It will be uncomfortable. It will be messy. You will have to mourn the person you thought you were supposed to be in order to become the person you actually are. But it is the only path to a life that is truly yours. A life where your power is not a source of terror, but a source of creation. A life where you are not a prisoner of your own potential, but a partner with it. A life where you are, at last, whole. This is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice, a daily choice to favor courage over comfort, action over analysis, and wholeness over perfection. It is the commitment to showing up in all your glorious imperfection and offering your gifts to the world, not when they are perfect, but when they are ready. And they are ready now. Let's bring this home. You came into this video believing your perfectionism was a virtue, a shield. You now know it is a cage, a beautiful, socially acceptable prison that has kept you from the terrifying, glorious, and messy business of living your own life. You have kept your power locked in the shadow, not because you are weak, but because you were afraid of its strength, and that fear has cost you years. But the past is a lesson, not a life sentence. The door to the cage is open. The only thing standing in your way is the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you are capable of. It is time to write a new story, a story of courage, a story of action, a story of wholeness. Your power is not in being perfect. It is in being real. And your real life begins the moment you give yourself permission to be imperfect. If this message hit home, if you are ready to trade the prison of perfection for the freedom of wholeness, then right now, in the comments type, I choose to be whole, not perfect. Not for me, for you. Let it be your first act of rebellion against the tyranny of your own mind. A public declaration that you are ready to begin. And if this video gave you something real, please like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Wise Daily. Every video on this channel is built to give you one thing: the philosophical tools to live with more power, more clarity, and more intention. We'll see you in the next one.